I'm going to make a sermon out of this. And so she said, well, she started thinking, and then she lost track, but then she started telling me of a story. Well, she told me about the temperature. And then she said, one time we had that happen. The temperature dropped, something happened at the greenhouse. Matt got a phone call. Matt came in late at night, and he said, we don't often come in here late at night. She said, it's near impossible to see around here. She said, because, there's no lights. There's no lights in the farm. I said, what do you mean there's no lights in the farm? She said, there's no street lights. There's no lamps. There's nothing that we put on. I said, well, why? Why is there no lights in the farm? She said, well, if there was a street lamp in the farm, if there was any kind of light there, all the plants would grow towards that light. I said, you got to be kidding me. You got all the plants would grow towards that light. So every single one of them would turn and grow that way. And they would all grow differently than we want them to grow. And there'd be no good to purchase. There'd be no good for us. Their intended purpose would change if there was another light out here. I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you don't even know what you're talking about. I said, that's what it is spiritually, right there. I said, if there's any other artificial light in our lives, that we will grow away from God. That there's only one light that we need. There's only one light that's the source of our power and the source of our strength, and that light is Jesus. And every other artificial light in our lives will cause us to grow away from Him. And we will grow towards that light. Have you seen it happen in your lives? I have. It's so sad, isn't it? Artificial light comes into our lives, and we grow towards it. We direct our attention towards it. And man, God must be so disappointed when we turn our attention to it. Sometimes we invite the artificial light. We put it right in our lives. Sometimes it's the world. The world certainly is putting all these artificial lights, saying, this can be your source of power. This can be your source of strength. You are the source of power in your life. God says, no, that's not the way it goes. Before He says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, He says, remember, you shall have no other gods before you. You shall have no other idols, no other graven image before you except me. But even in the remembering of the Sabbath, in Exodus chapter 31, verses 12 to 8, it's interesting. This verse bookends the Ten Commandments. In Exodus 20, the Ten Commandments are introduced, and then there's other commandments all the way through. And then right before Moses is about to go down the mountain, God shouts to him. And these are the last verses He shouts to him before Moses goes down the mountain. Then the Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, you must observe my Sabbaths. He didn't say, hey, say to the Israelites, hey, you must not commit adultery. No, He didn't remind them of that one. He didn't remind them of coveting their neighbors. You must not steal. He didn't say that one. The last thing that God said to Moses before He went down to the mountain, went down off the mountain to talk to the Israelites one more time, say to them, you must observe my Sabbaths. This will be a sign in me and you for the generations to come, so that you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath, because it is holy to you. And anyone who desecrates it must be put to death. And whoever does any work on that day must be cut off from his people. For 6 days, work is to be done. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. And whoever does any work on the Sabbath day must be put to death. The Israelites are to observe the Sabbath, celebrating it for the generations to come as a lasting covenant. It will be a sign between me and the Israelites forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, and on the seventh day He abstained from work and rested. And when the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, He gave him the 2 tablets of the testimony. The tablet stone of so described the finger of God. I was obviously way done with that, because where it stops for me is in verse 12. It says, so that you may know that the Lord makes you holy. Observe the Sabbath. Remember it. He gives 3 different, I want to say reasons, but God gives 3 different spins on remembering the Sabbath. The first one, because the Lord made it. 6 days. And we see that repeated several times. And so He's a source of provision. The second one, remember we're slaves. And so He's our protector. He does not want us to become slaves again. And thirdly, that He is the source of our power, so that you may know that the Lord makes you holy. That's why you remember the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath so that you may know it's the Lord who makes you holy. Because, folks, our source of power is our holiness. And our holiness is measured by our level of intimacy with God. The more you're with God, the more holy you will become. There is an already but not yet, right, to our holiness. We are already holy, but if you see me tomorrow and spend the day with me, you realize I'm not that holy. And the same true as all of us. There's an already holy inside of us, that Christ has cleansed us from all unrighteousness. But there is the after-church unholiness. You know, where we're not quite that holy yet, because we're not finished. But there is certainly a way to measure. I know people who are holier than others, and they don't know they're holier than others. But they've been with the Lord. They're with God. And the more we are growing in our intimate relationship with God, the holier we become. God was severe about this Sabbath, this structure. So severe that anyone who disobeyed it was to be put to death. Because He didn't want that to infect everybody else. We're going to stop there right there. You guys don't know how important this structure is in your life. If you only knew how important it was. Because this structure of the Sabbath will keep you from falling. Will keep you from going back. Later on in the Scriptures it tells us that when Israel was taken over by Babylon, and Babylon came in and took them in as slaves one more time, or another time, a different time. And Babylon took over, and they were deported and became slaves. That it was because they broke the Sabbath, ultimately. It came down to the Sabbath. Because they broke it. Because they did not put their trust in God. You see, we put our trusts either in God or a couple other things. We put our trust in ourselves, and so we have pride. Or we put our trust in our past. Somehow, we put our trust in our traditions. That all of us have traditions and past that we trust more than we trust God. In your daily devotional for this week, I tried to give you some insight onto the 7 woes that Jesus shared with the Pharisees. Because the Pharisees were people who obeyed the Sabbath. Matter of fact, they added laws to the Sabbath that didn't need to be there. And one of the things that I love what Jesus said about the Sabbath is that man was not made to serve the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made to serve man. The Sabbath is made to serve you. A day of rest. I believe that we are to not be legalistic about maintaining the Sabbath in our lives. But there is a Sabbath rest that you and I are to have weekly. That we are to spend time with the Lord, looking to Him for our source of provision, protection, and power. Some of you need to say, I'm going to start a Sabbath in my week. I think all of us really need that. We need a Sabbath day, a day of rest, a day to be with our family, a day to be with the Lord, not a day to work, not a day to make estimates, not a day to write up our bills, just a day of rest. You're saying, Anthony, how can I do that? I don't have time. I'm telling you, this is the structure God wants for you. You have to make this. It's a matter of trust. It's a matter of trusting Lord to provide. And God sent manna from heaven. On the last day, the day before the Sabbath, Moses told the people, God will provide you extra on that last day. So that what you gather will be enough for that day and the Sabbath day of rest. Who do you trust? What kind of greenhouse are you growing in? It's my hope as a church that we create enough functional structures for you to grow in your relationship with God. This service, our Life Together groups, your daily devotions, gathering together in other environments, retreats. These structures are created so that you might grow in your relationship with God. You want them to be functional. Some of you need to revisit the structures in your life and saying, am I making room for God? Am I looking towards artificial light? Do I have enough water in my system? How's the temperature gauge in your life? Are you really, really cold? Really, really cold? Or are you really, really hot? Because you shouldn't be really, 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 really hot. Some Christians who are really, really hot are just too heavenly minded and no earthly good. We don't want to be way out there where really nobody is. Okay? They're just living crazy lives.